Hey YouTube, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that is the 1911 pistol. And before we get started, I'm going to let you know that every one of these pistols have been safety checked. There's nothing in them, and as I pick them up, I will show you they're not loaded. So what's the subject matter today? It's the 1911 pistol and whether you should get one or not. Now, a lot of people, if you're watching this video, you're pretty much into firearms, and I think that this pistol is one of the most misunderstood pistols out on the market. 1911 pistols have generally been known for people to either love them or hate them. There is really no in between. You either love the 1911 or you hate the 1911, and I'm going to show you the pros and cons to owning a 1911 when I show each one of these. Now, some of the biggest complaints about the 1911 pistol is capacity, weight, reliability, and cost. And I'm going to sit there and show you some of the things that you can maybe lean towards owning a 1911, or maybe this isn't the gun for you, because it isn't for everybody. So let's start off with what the 1911 actually is. So right here we have an original 1911. This is actually from 1918 is when this one was manufactured, and this is manufactured by Colt. This is an actual military gun. If you look, it says model of 1911 U.S. Army, and it says United States property on it. So the reason this gun exists is the military was wanting a 45 caliber handgun to use as a sidearm for the military. They were mainly using revolvers that were 38 caliber, and long story short, they were having problems knocking down the opposing enemy, and they wanted a larger caliber handgun. And John Moses Browning, the genius that he is, designed this gun. Now, what are some of the features of this? It's a semi-automatic 45 caliber gun. It's single action only, meaning when you pull the hammer back, that's the only time it will fire. It will not fire again on it. Now, it has a bunch of safety features on it that a lot of handguns today doesn't have. It has a thumb safety on it. It has a grip safety on it. So, very safe gun. Now, what are some of the advantages of this gun? Well, the first thing right out of the bat, I'm going to tell you for a 1911, the advantage it is the trigger. There is going to be no modern pistol that can duplicate the trigger on a 1911. It just will not happen, folks. This is going to be the best trigger you ever felt. Now, this old girl right here is probably going to be the worst trigger amongst these ones that I'm showing you here, and it is still going to be better than any striker fired gun that they have today. Now, if you look at this, you have minimum take up here when you hit this wall, and it's just so crisp how it goes off. And the reset to this thing is going to be right here, very technical, and goes off again. Now, the reason that is a 1911 trigger goes straight back into the frame. There is no pivot point like you see on 99% of all other handguns out there. So it makes it to where your finger is touching the exact same place the entire time through the trigger press. So it gives you a very natural feel when you're using this handgun. Now, the original 1911s were designed to be a 5-inch barrel and shoot a 45 ACP cartridge in them. Now, here are some of the disadvantages to it, folks. The gun has a couple safeties on it. It has this grip safety right here, and it has a thumb safety. And when you carry this gun, you have to carry it with the hammer cocked and this safety on. So as you have this in a holster, if you're using it for duty or carry or whatever you're going to have, you're going to draw this gun out, and there's an extra step. You have to take the safety off of it. A lot of the newer firearms today do not have any kind of external safety on them, so a lot of people see this as a disadvantage. Now, one of the other disadvantages to this gun, the original design to it, and a lot of people complain about this, and I agree with it, is this is mainly designed for a right-handed person. So when you have this gun, you have to work this safety with your thumb. If you have left hands, if you're a left-handed person, as you can see, there is no safety over here. Now, a lot of people have trained how to flip their thumb around here and use the safety. I don't have that problem because I'm not a left-handed shooter, but a lot of people can adapt, and muscle memory is a big part of the human race. They can learn and adapt to things because humans are mostly teachable on most things, but that is a big disadvantage to this gun. One of the other disadvantages and complaints that a lot of people have when it comes to a 1911 is their capacity. And you have a single stack magazine of 45 ACP. And in the single stack magazines, they hold 8 rounds. So you have a total capacity of 9 rounds if you're carrying one in the chamber with a 1911. I know there's a lot of these super hyper guns today that hold a lot more rounds in them, but that is just the way this thing is designed, and that's what makes it a beautiful operating machine. Now, reliability. In reliability, the way this gun was designed, it was designed to have a 5-inch barrel, and all the timing and everything works correctly when you use a 45 ACP, 5-inch barrel, and the correct recoil spring and all that. Now, a lot of these newer companies have come out with these shorter commander style, and what I say in 1911 terms, the commander style is a 4 1/4 inch barrel, so they've shortened it up. And if you'll notice, if you'll look at this next to a full-size 1911, it's quite a bit shorter than the full-size one. And this makes the gun more maneuverable, lightens it up a little bit, everything. This one's a Wesson Valor, and this is a well-made 1911. And this one's got some more features on it, some more modern features that might attract the younger crowd. It's got a little bobbed-off frame right here, so you can quote-unquote conceal this a little bit more. The strip safety has to be depressed for this gun to work, and this one has what they call like a little memory hump on it. So when you have your hand on it, it automatically hits it. You got your front texturing on it for grip, for the recoil. It tames the recoil down a little bit, makes it a little bit more controllable. But other than that, it's the same gun that I just showed you, just a shorter version of it. Now, there's been a lot of technology and advancement that makes these shorter ones work, because when you start shortening down to 1911, that's where you start running into the second complaint I'm talking about, is the reliability. So you have to get a reputable company that's put the research in and build these things right to make these things operate correctly. Now, a lot of people think these things are dated and they're outdated and they don't have all the features of the new hyper guns out today. And that's somewhat correct. You don't have all the optic mounts and you don't have lights on them. Well, folks, you shouldn't put lights on a gun anyway. I mean, I know there's a whole argument why lights work, and I see both sides on it. Just not a big light person, and I've gone into that before, and we're not going to get into that discussion today. But you can get 1911s now with rails on them if the light is your cup of tea. But this gun here, this is a Caspian Custom built gun. This was built just for me, so this is the only one that exists, and it has the fancy magwell on it for fast reloads if you were going to do that. It has the front texturing on it. If you can see, it has a larger extended magazine release on it, but still no safety on the other side. This is still geared towards right-handed people. But this one's just a more up-to-date, better sights on it, all that kind of stuff. Just more like a competition gun. Very well hand-built gun. Now, when you move into stuff like these real high-end custom guns like this Wilson Combat right here. Now this one seems to lean towards more modern people. Now this one's a little bit short and slide. This is what they call a professional model. This is a 4-inch, and it doesn't have any kind of barrel bushing on it. So this is going to break down about like a Glock does, or any kind of little striker fired gun. You don't have to have any special tools to take off the barrel bushing or anything like that. It has your texturing on it. It has your carry cuts in it for putting it into a holster. It has like anti-glare stuff, and it's checkered everywhere. Now, if you'll notice on this gun, it has a left-handed safety. So this one has an ambidextrous safety. If you look at this head on, it has both sides. So a 1911 can be made to work for a left-handed person. But the problem is, there's no magazine release on this side. You have to learn how to release a magazine with your finger or something like that. But that's true for any of the striker fired guns today, they're only going to be on one side. Now, a lot of them are ambidextrous where you can reverse them around, but I cannot think of one that has a button on each side that you can release the magazine on them. So you're either going to set this up for left-handed people or right-handed people. This one here is not reversible. It's always meant to release on one side. Now, there's a couple companies out there that make left-handed only 1911s where all this stuff, even the injection side and everything, has been put to one side, but they're rather expensive to do that. Now, what are some of the other disadvantages to the 1911? Well, one of them is going to be the weight alone. It's an all-metal gun. It's not made, there's no polymer in it or anything like that. It's just going to weigh quite a bit. If you're going to use this to carry around, there's going to be a significant weight difference in a 1911 versus a polymer frame gun. And if you don't want to carry a heavy gun around, this is probably not going to be the route that you want to go. These are going to weigh quite a bit. Now, they do have alloy frame 1911s that are like lightweight ones that are out today. I'm not a big fan of those because the alloy frame ones seem to give you problems. If you have just a feed ramp made out of alloy, that's going to be a wear spot. Or the other way is in the feed ramp on the inside of the 1911 here, the barrel will drop down and act as the feed ramp. Well, I believe that that's going to cause a little bit of reliability issues, and that gives what gives the 1911 a bad name. So I like to stick with just steel frame 1911s when I get them. So some of the other disadvantages are reliability. Well, these guns have to be cleaned and lubricated. This is not the gun that you're going to go 5,000 rounds and not clean it. I know a lot of these new modern age guns, you can shoot 5,000 rounds to them before you even clean them, and they'll still run like a Swiss watch. That's not going to be the case with these. You have to take care of them, you have to clean them, and you have to keep them lubed, and they will work fine. Now, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. You can also flush your toilet at home 5,000 times and never clean it. It'll probably still work too. Is that a good idea, folks? I think not. You're probably going to want to clean your toilet more than between every 5,000 rounds. But that's another discussion to have another day. The capacity. People complain about the capacity on these things. They want to know why they don't hold 20 rounds. Well, they just simply don't, folks. I don't know why anybody would need 20 rounds in a handgun. At the end of the day, if capacity is your thing and you feel more comfortable carrying 20 rounds of ammo in a handgun, this is probably not going to be a platform for you. This is not going to work. Now, they do have some of these double stacked 1911s that have come out in the recent years. They call it the 2011, and they're double stacked 9mm. So it brings us into the next subject. A lot of people are 9mm fans, and they want these things in 9mm because they're softer shooting, they have less recoil. Well, you give up a couple things when you do that, folks. First of all, the 45 or the 1911 was designed to shoot 45 ACP. That is what makes it work. That's what makes this original design so great. The pressures of the 45 ACP, the timing, the spring, and all that just works so well with the 45 ACP. When you get a weaker cartridge, like a 9mm, you may tend to have a little bit of problems. When you have a proven design that's 113 years old, and you start changing stuff on that where you're asking for trouble. I'm not saying you're going to always have trouble with them, because there's a bunch of 9mm 1911s out there that work just fine. I'm just saying that this is the original design. This is what John Moses Browning designed, and I like to usually tend to stick with what works. And I'm a 45 ACP guy. Now, the problem that people have with 45 ACP is they say it has too much recoil and they want a softer shooting gun. Well, maybe the 1911 just isn't for you, because if you're going to buy a 1911, I would recommend getting one in 45 ACP. It just gives you that classic feel of shooting a 45 out of a steel 1911. Now, we're going to go into the cost, and I'm not a big cost guy. But one of the downfalls to the 1911 is the cost. You can buy a fairly inexpensive entry-level 1911, but usually those entry-level 1911s are going to cost about the same as a striker-fired gun. So a lot of people are going to say, why wouldn't I just get a Glock or a SIG or an FN or something like that, or an HK, somewhere like that? Well, simple reason is they're never going to duplicate the accuracy or the trigger that a 1911 has. However, the cost is going to be the same, but when you get into the cost of an entry-level 1911, you're also going to start having those reliability issues. They're not going to be made as well, and you're going to get an entry-level gun. You're not going to have all the good features or anything like that. You're not going to have all these this big old beaver tail to keep you from getting hammer bite on it, or the checkering or anything like that. All that costs money. So when you start moving up into a better decked out 1911, the cost is going to start rising, and they are rather expensive. They're more expensive to make because of all the handwork that has to go into them. These things don't snap together like a Lego set, like a polymer gun does. Polymer guns, you can take slides off of one and put them on another and change out barrels and all that, and they'll work fine. That's not the case with these. Everything in these guns have to be fitted to the gun. So this barrel will not go into this one. This barrel will not go into this one. This slide won't go onto this one without a little bit of fitting going on there. So that's going to be another thing. They're a little bit more complicated, but the quality that you get out of a fit together gun is what creates the accuracy and the good trigger and the shootability of it. So bottom line is, if you're not a 9mm person, you might want to just stick with what you have. And if you're a 45 person, you got to try one of these 1911s, folks. I mean, the people that knock these things are mainly people that's never had one. They don't know anything about them, so they go on the internet and bash something that they've never had their hands on. There is disadvantages to them. Some of the stuff is a little bit outdated, but the positives seem to outweigh the negatives to me. So if you get a 5-inch 45 1911 that's a quality built gun, is it reliable? It's 100% reliable. It will run with any polymer gun. Is it accurate? Yes, it's equally as accurate. It's probably more accurate than any of the other hyper guns that's out on the market today. If you're a competition shooter, can you take one of these guns and go into competition? Yes, you can. So the thing that started with 1911s is they were just a military gun. Well, in the 70s and the 80s, they started modifying these things. So when it started off, all you could get was a Colt. Colt had the patent on the 1911, and that's pretty much what you got. And if you wanted something that was a little bit more rambunctious when it comes to like competition shooting, you had to get something like a Gold Cup that had a better trigger and better sights and stuff like that on it. And people really started using them for competition because of the great trigger they have and their known accuracy. But in the 70s and the 80s, people started buying Colt 1911s and started modifying them. And one of them was a guy named Bill Wilson. And then he eventually started his own company and started producing stuff like this, where these are real high-end, super custom, hand-fit 1911s. Well, the general public, they really didn't catch on really that well until, around the 1980s. All the companies started making 1911s. There's umpteen number of companies that make 1911s. And then the assault weapons ban happened, and you couldn't have a high capacity gun anyway. So people started figuring, if you're not gonna, if you have to limit your capacity to 10 rounds only, and that's for the new guns, not the people that were grandfathered in, why not shoot a bigger, more powerful bullet? So these 1911s really started to catch on, and that's when you seen the craze of the Springfields and the Kimbers and all that start really taking off in the 1911 world. And of course, that all went away. The assault weapons ban lifted, and now people are into these hyper guns with 1 million rounds in them, and they shoot 1 million 9mm that have less recoil, and all they do is talk trash about this platform here. This platform's a great platform, folks, and there are advantages and disadvantages to each one. I mean, to these guns. So I'm a 1911 fan, but I'm not going to say it doesn't have its flaws in today's world. But I think the flaws can easily be overlooked and adapted to enjoy the shooting experience of one of these fine made firearms. I mean, these things are awesome. I recommend anybody getting a 1911. It's just, you got to understand there's going to be a little bit more cost, a little bit more maintenance when you buy one. Figure out what you want to use your handgun for. If you're a tool only guy that wants to carry this thing every day, and you want to carry, and you want a 9mm, and you want it to hold 20 rounds, and you never want to clean it, this is probably not going to be for you. If you're a firearm enthusiast that wants something that looks really nice, yeah, a lot of people cannot argue that these things don't look better than the new, more modern guns. Well, something that looks really nice, have pride of ownership, have a 1911, and have a good one, this might be the route you need to go. Understand, when you buy something that's a nice one, it's going to cost more than the newer polymer frame guns. They just cost more to make, and that's just part of life. If you want to get into it in the entry level game and you buy the very bottom one that costs about the same as a good polymer gun, it was probably not going to perform like the polymer gun, and the quality is not going to be there for that it is if you get one of these more high-end ones. But anyway, folks, it's all up to y'all. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. I just want you to know there are advantages and disadvantages to this 113-year-old design that came out in 1911. I love them. I like everything about 1911s. I think it's the best shooting handgun on the market. I think it has the best ergonomics in your hand on the market, and I will never not own a 1911. If you have any questions on any of these firearms, folks, I have videos on each and every one of them. This mainly wasn't about going over each individual handgun. It was just talking about the 1911 platform in general. Thank you very much for watching my video today, and you folks have a great day.